Scenes of celebration we saw this morning and through the day as 3 Israeli hostages were released, handed over in dramatic scenes surrounded by Hamas fighters in the heart of the Gaza Strip. Among them, Emily Damari, 28 years old, a British-Israeli dual national who was reunited with her mother in emotional scenes, as were 25-year-old Romy Gonen and 31-year-old Doron Steinbrecher, all now, tonight, back with their families. These are live shots from Ofer prison in the occupied West Bank, because this evening Palestinian families are also waiting to be reunited with the 90 Palestinian prisoners who are set to be released from that Israeli jail as part of this ceasefire deal. Well, we begin our reporting this evening with our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, who has been looking at how an extraordinary day here in the Middle East has unfolded.
In Gaza, a show of force by Hamas as they handed the hostages over to the International Red Cross. In the white vehicles, Doron Steinbrecher, Romy Gonen and Emily Damari were starting their journey back to freedom. The men and guns were there to send a signal to Israel and other Palestinian factions that whether they like it or not, Hamas is still in charge in Gaza. That sight would infuriate Israelis. Back safely in Israel, British-Israeli Emily Damari first. Family reunions in a hospital in Tel Aviv. All 3 women were healthy enough to see the people they'd missed the most. This day has been a long time coming. At first light, thousands of Palestinians in Gaza began trying to walk home. This fragile ceasefire started almost 3 hours late. With zero trust on either side, Israel continued its attacks here in Khan Yunis as it waited for the names of the women being released. Gaza Civil Defence, run by Hamas, said 19 more Palestinians were killed by Israel during the delay. Hamas joined the celebrations, trying to claim some kind of victory. The Israelis have destroyed the offensive power Hamas used to attack them 15 months ago. But the Americans say Hamas has nearly as many new recruits as Israel has killed. After so much bloodshed, celebratory gunfire did not make Jana flinch.
May God have mercy on the oppressed and those who have passed, and pity on us who survived. And God willing, everyone will return home.
This celebration in Khan Yunis was filmed by a trusted Palestinian cameraman working for the BBC. Israel does not let international journalists enter Gaza to report freely. Just over the border in Israel is the site of the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas killed more than 380 people on the 7th of October and took 40 hostage. This weekend, with the ceasefire coming, many Israelis made their own pilgrimages, moving quietly around the photos and memorials to those who were killed. A short distance away is another memorial, the festival-goers' cars, hundreds of them destroyed in the attack. Israelis here said they'd wanted a deal in which all the hostages were swapped for Palestinian prisoners at the same time. That's because they believed the war is going to resume. They said it was unavoidable while Hamas still has armed men in Gaza.
They want to kill us. They want to finish us. So what is the good questions? Look. Look. This is the answer. This is what they want. Can we live like this? No.
A ceasefire, by definition, is a compromise between enemies. But since the October attacks, Prime Minister Netanyahu has talked repeatedly about getting all the hostages back through total victory, the complete annihilation of Hamas as a political and military force. But right now, that is not what the Israeli people are being offered. They're worried, says Israel's leading pollster, that this deal, in phases over months, could break down before all the hostages are out.
Israelis know that things that happen in phases that are conditional upon one another are basically another way of the Israeli government and the other side, Hamas, also saying, we don't trust you, we're looking to trip you up, we're looking to accuse you of breaking the deal so that we can break the deal. It's a mutual cycle that we've seen in every other phase deal in Israeli history, and particularly with Israeli-Palestinian relations.
Tonight in the West Bank, Palestinians are waiting for the release of their prisoners, 90 in exchange for the 3 Israelis. The next swap of prisoners and hostages is due on Saturday. For Palestinian and Israeli families, this is a night for hope and relief, and some trepidation about what might lie ahead. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Tel Aviv.
Well, as Jeremy was saying there is still one key element of that ceasefire agreement that we are waiting to happen this evening, even though it's now after midnight, and that is the release of those 90 Palestinian prisoners. Now, these are live shots of Ofer prison, that Israeli prison in the occupied West Bank this evening. We can speak to our correspondent, John Donnison, who's been following this throughout the day. And John, the buses have gone in to collect those prisoners, but they haven't left yet.
That's right, and the people you can see behind me here, including the families of those 90 prisoners and their friends and supporters, they've been waiting here, some of them, for 10 hours in the cold. There is a mood of excitement, but also anxiety, because they didn't know until fairly late in the day whether their loved ones' names were actually on the list. 90 prisoners to be freed, the vast majority of them women, and also some children. And we are expecting them to be out in the next few hours. One young woman here told me she was waiting for her sister, a 32-year-old university worker who's been detained in Israel without charge for the last 7 months. And she said, look, I'm happy my sister's getting out, but what really matters is that ceasefire coming into effect in Gaza.
John, thank you. And if we turn to Gaza, a plan to actually reconstruct the Strip still isn't in place yet. That would be part 3 of this 3-phase deal. In fact, even the discussions about it don't begin until 16 days have passed in this phase 1. And for now, we've seen today streams of displaced Palestinians beginning to return home, beginning to see if their houses are even still standing after 15 months of fighting. Fergal Keane reports now on the future for people in Gaza.
From every face, the war stares back. Is it really over? Many wonder. All they've lost, all they've endured. But relief after the ceasefire. Civil defence workers no longer fearing Israeli attack. Over 90 of their colleagues were killed. Hatim al-Attar, 24 years old, spent months searching for the wounded and the dead, checking for Israeli snipers before going on, not knowing if you'll survive the day. Hatem often led the way into moments that could change everything. His friends rushed to help. Hatem survived to live in hope.
With the ceasefire deal, I will pursue my university study once universities are back to business. I'm single, but I will think about getting married.
Establishing security is a first priority. A major aid operation is planned. The need is desperate. This was a Jordanian convoy being unloaded soon after the ceasefire. Two million people are displaced. The BBC followed Professor Juma Abu Shiha as he returned home for the first time.
I built this house block by block. I painted it and worked on it. I came back and it's not a house anymore. I can't find a house. I can only see destruction.
Gaza is full of traumatised child survivors like Amr al-Hindi. Last October, the BBC filmed him after an Israeli strike hit his home. "You're strong, darling," the nurse tells him. "Where's Sharif?" he asked about his brother. "He's okay," the nurse responds. But Sharif and the rest of Amr's family were already dead. Now he's living with his grandparents and talks about following the dream of another dead brother. So much has been taken that will never come back. The living wonder if they will ever see the end of war. Fergal Keane, BBC News, on the Israel-Gaza border.
Well, as we've been hearing, 3 Israeli hostages have been released today of the 251 who were seized by Hamas and taken into captivity on the 7th of October. Now, of those, according to Israel, more than 90 are still unaccounted for, but only 60 are believed to be alive. Well, Emily Damari, the British Israeli who was released today, has family roots in Beckenham in south-east London. And Lucy Manning reports now on the release of the only British Israeli hostage.
It's the smile that says she's free. Emily Damari and her mum Mandy radiating joy as she spoke to her brother on the phone moments after her release. This was all Mandy had said she wanted: to hug her daughter again. Emily in good spirits despite her ordeal, despite missing 2 fingers after she was shot on October the 7th. Tonight in the hospital, she reunited with her brothers and other family, clutching onto them. For so long, they have been kept apart. Earlier, she stepped out of the darkness, away from the terror of Hamas and into the light. 471 days of brutal captivity. Since October the 7th, Surrey-born Mandy could only hold a poster of her daughter. Last month, campaigning in London, she was also in the dark, unsure if Emily was alive.
I love her to the moon and back. She is a special person. It sounds like a cliche, but she is the best daughter I could possibly ask for. She's the core of our family, and the core is missing. It's like a piece of my heart isn't there.
Emily, who loved coming to Britain to go to concerts, Spurs matches and visit family, has missed so much. Her British grandfather died while she was being held. In London, her family overcome by the news she was free.
I broke down when I saw the pictures. We're just overjoyed. Can't quite believe it. Didn't think it was going to happen and that she'd be first out. We just can't quite believe it, but we're also sad. This is just the beginning. We need to get the other hostages out.
Tonight, Mandy had one simple message: thank you for bringing Emily home. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Well, our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, joins me here in Tel Aviv tonight. I think, Jeremy, one of the really striking images from today was the handover of those hostages in Gaza, surrounded by members of Hamas, brandishing weapons. Hamas's hold on Gaza was supposed to have been weakened by now.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they showed all their men doing that in such numbers was to get that message over that, in fact, they are still there, aiming it not just at Israel, but at rival Palestinians, other factions, the Fatah group, for example, in the West Bank. There are a lot of international expectations they might be part of some kind of a future governance of Gaza. I think Hamas is saying, hang on a minute, we're still here. But, you know, also their attempts to claim some kind of victory out of this. I think a lot of Palestinians will just reject that idea, because away from their attempts at celebration, there is just an appalling scene of devastation, thousands of civilians killed, tens of thousands. And a lot of Palestinians would say, look what they brought down on us. But also, that side, I think, is going to drive a lot of Israelis mad, because the whole point of the war from their perspective was to get rid of Hamas. The Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, has said he set their war aim very high, which was to eradicate them as a political and as a military force in Gaza. And now they're seeing them still there. And I think that will play in to the views of those who think that actually this isn't the end of the war, it's just an intermission.